All right, ladies and gents, good evening. We're here on a Friday, and it's Labor Day weekend. So happy Labor Day, everybody. Welcome into another episode of A Different View. Today is a good one. Today is a real good one because we get to talk about Labor Day. We get to talk about the relationship between bosses or employers and workers or employees. And I'm going to be using some terminology here. Again, you guys have been on this journey with me, and just a big shout out. A lot of times you guys will hear me shout out stuff. Shout out to my followers, people who have joined me on this journey, taking their time out of their day, whether they're in their car or working out or whatever they're doing, to listen to me. Definitely thank you. There's a truth. They say it's an African proverb, but there's a truth that it takes a village to raise a child. And in truth, what I'll get into today deals with it takes a village to help a village. So with that, here we go. Gonna kind of attack this thing from three different sides here. Again, there's a lot. When you're talking about humanity's history of working, there is a lot that you could uncover. You could spend time, whether in the bathroom, going to the bathroom, as most of us do. That's our little getaway there. Sorry for anybody, I just blew the secret there, but most of the time when folks spending time in the bathroom like that, they're just trying to have some peace and quiet. So let's be mindful of that. Another part of what I'm going to get into this is the idea of being mindful of others, because I think that has affected the work process from many different social constructs. That phrase, just real quick, so that you guys understand what I mean when I start using that word throughout today's episode. A social construct is an idea that people make up in which to give some level of order, grounding, help a society function, if you will, whether for good or bad, of course. Some social constructs are racism, sexism, classism, ageism. There's a bunch of them, and they've all been at working in play here. So. But I just want to take a moment to say thank you guys for listening to me. I know some of the stuff here that I speak on is hard to hear. Some of it might not be. Some of you guys may be cheering me in the background or booing me at the same time. But thank you for taking the time to listen. Also, shout out to Spotify for podcasters. Again, getting into topics here, speaking on businesses and basically business relationships. Opportunity is one of the hugest ones that has affected so much today. The reason Labor Day was made, to be honest with you, a day to honor the workers. Because of a lot of mental conditioning that's been done, people do not honor workers. Kind of what we saw in 2020 as this horrible outbreak occurred across the planet, where nurses were vilified. I may have talked about this in previous episodes, but we're not vilified from the standpoint that their job is discredited, and we must be on guard, folks, when it comes to people discrediting what you do. Much of how this society runs, and inside these social constructs that have been made by greedy people, is based and founded in making sure that they tell you how ineffective you are. They got to get you to believe how ineffective you are. If they can start by saying how ineffective you are, they make a basis for how they can take from you. Because again, if you're ineffective, what do you deserve with the little you have? So that's just something to keep in the back of your mind there. So again, real big shout out to Spotify for podcasters, giving me and so many other people who start up podcasts a platform to speak. Definitely thank you. So we're going to attack this from three different sides here. I got papers all over the place, and this is also, I'm going to tie this into the Sunday message. Again, on my podcast, I like to do the Sunday message. And I think when we speak on labor, much of, like many of these things in life, much of this has been twisted using what people will call Christian beliefs. Basically, people's belief in a higher power, basically to supplant someone and then take from them. And the Bible is full of references concerning how people should operate. I will warn y'all, we'll try not to use any bad language, as they say. But I get pretty passionate about this. So if I get elevated in my voice, I apologize. Maybe even more so than y'all have heard me before. But here we go. So 3 different ways we're going to look at this: the historical context, and we're going to go over a basic one. I'm not going to go super deep into every labor riot or violence that has occurred. We're going to get into the topic of the definition of violence, because I'm going to go over words here so that people understand what's being said when people talk, because it conveys thoughts in their mind as they talk. So there's that. And we're going to give some verses and some stories on labor, the working relationship between employer and employee, and some of the connections between the two. So start off with the history of this thing. First Labor Day was September 5th, 1982, in the good old city of New York. It was in accordance with the Central Labor Union. One thing that you guys will hear me say, and I'm not going to shout out any, or not shout out. I'm not going to talk specifically to any corporation, company, entity per se. This has to do with a mindset of how they all should operate, how they all should strive for, how you can see when they're being disingenuous in their actions, irregardless of what they say. And again, a lot of this is to protect the worker. We have to realize Labor Day was made as people standing up for the right to be heard, as is a human right. I know. Of course, there's been some wild stuff lately about what is a human right and what isn't. But when we look at the laws of nature and such, not the ones that humans make up, because again, humans twist too much, because they're driven by greed or hate, or just evil of any type to take from people. So they twist and make up laws and rules and stuff. So that's not talking about that. We're talking about the underlying things that connect humanity, that kind of bind us together here. So unions and organizations and coalitions, whatever term you want to put on it, they are necessary, as we have seen through the history of Labor Day and working the working relationship, so that both sides are represented, because it's necessary. I think maybe it's a good part to stop here and talk about this. The idea, and especially when we get into these terms, and again, terms, and this is why I say pay attention, pay very close attention to words and phrases. Look at the definitions of the stuff that we say every day, because in all honesty, it's put there on purpose to lead us off the trail of that which is, in this case, talking about Labor Day, protection for the workers. There is more than enough rules and regulations that are set up for bosses. I think people wouldn't even be paying attention if they didn't realize that in corporations, you can't even become a corporation without having a certain set of policies in place. Much like which we'll get into when election day hits here, because I'm just going to use election day. I'm not waiting until next year because people will be too distracted, unfortunately. So stay tuned for the election day episode. It is with the idea that we have to understand things are put in play here to get us to sway one way or the other for folks who honestly do not care about us at all to take from us, and how you must protect yourself. It's not a personal thing. It's business. And the business side of a relationship, when both things are being honored, is not only toward the employee, to the employer, excuse me. So like in capitalism, where the employer or the owner of a business benefits. Now, I'm going to put this to rest real quick because this is where folks get a little sideways in all this. You own something, you should profit from it. No ifs, ands, or buts. And just as the same, because you own a business entity, whatever it is, while you profit from it, if you have someone working for you, and again, this is where this rule starts to get twisted by greed. This is where people start to play and nitpick a little bit and, take one or two to give to the boss and leave one for the worker. At the end of the day, if you have someone working for you and you are benefiting from the service they are giving you, whether they signed up for it or not, they are more than due, the same way you are more than due what you receive as profit from the business. And that relationship has been broken. It has been shattered. There has been some work to try to put bandages, if you will, at best, on the gouge that is the exploitation of the worker, because there is no other way of saying that. Straight down to a slave-like mentality, and we'll get into that as we go along here. So again, in capitalism, makes absolute sense that if you own something, you should benefit. The problem is the people that operate behind the thought process of an owner owning something and benefiting from it, which is why normally when I get in conversations with people about this, I will let them know the socioeconomic thought processes that are capitalism, communism, Marxism. These are all things, guys, y'all can, guys and gals, you can look up and know for yourself. That's the other thing. Too many people take too much information from someone else and allow that to be their guide instead of them looking for it themselves. They've taught their kids how to be like that, whether knowingly or unknowingly. It's a lot. And this is the part where all the other stuff we have learned about in history comes down to a boiling point. Because you can look up all the different people who have ever benefited to society and made inventions and done this and done that, been a slave class for a whole other society to build up their wealth while getting very little. And the reoccurring theme is the respect that should be given not only to the owner, but also to the worker. And the quicker that we repair that, and push, and honestly, today's society, to the chagrin of many people who truly are still bound by a greedy mentality, and again, ladies and gentlemen, there's something that I must address here, and that is the dodgeball mentality, if you will. So when certain things come up, like me saying, people being greedy and such, automatically folks turtle shell into the preset mental cues and catchphrases that would be said. Well, it's not all people, and it's not this, and it's not. I understand that it's not all people. So as I'm speaking, I realize everybody does not have a greedy mindset. They actually are about providing opportunities for people. So this is not meant as an attack. This is no different than when we speak on racism and stuff like that. This is for growth. This is for growth. This is for unity. And sometimes in that, certain things have to be shed aside that were no good. Sometimes when you lose weight, you have to put aside certain things that you thought were good for you that are not, so that you can continue to live a healthy life. And that's the same thing with this, when speaking on finances. Couple things that I've found out over time. A lot of these, in talking about supplanting people and manipulating people to get them to believe a certain thing, to forget about either where they came from or what their actual protections are. This is an example here where don't forget where you've come from. Don't forget the struggle that these men and women, brave men and women before us, put themselves through. Such horror, to be able, standing up in the face of greed, to be able to say, I am recognized, I am important, I have value. Regardless of my age, my gender, my belief system, I have value. And the underlying fact of that is that we've all been created here. We're all made here. We're all down here. We're all human beings, all breathing the same air. drinking the same water. Well, again, I guess if you prefer Life Water over Dasani or Poland Spring over Osaka water, depending on where you come from in the country. And that's just to put a little bit of brevity into this, because this will get kind of serious. So this thing went on from September 5th, 1882. Almost 12 years later, did President Grover sign it into law that it was a national holiday. So June 28th, 1894, President Grover signed, and of course it was being recognized by different states and such, as normally a lot of these things go down. Even though it was the 1800s, the same process that you see today went on then, maybe little tweaks differently. Groups of people change and switch, but the same thing, if you will, remains. The same process by which we go about things, for the most part, still remains. So while states were hopping on board with, hey, yeah, we need to talk about the social and economic achievements of the everyday, quote unquote, everyday worker. Certain states hopped on them. A couple of them that did in the beginning. The first one, of course, New York, which is cool. Shout out New York. Oregon was part of it. Colorado was part of it. So was Massachusetts and New Jersey. And of course, in New Jersey, there was a whole debate on which person started or founded Labor Day. From different things that I've seen, it looks like it was a couple of white people, which this is another thing to take to note, or European people, excuse me. Again, I try to get away from white and black, because saying white and black wasn't a thing until around the 1800s. Again, you were spoken to and talked about as you originated from a place. You come from Ethiopia, you're Ethiopian, you're not black. You come from Italy, you're Italian, you're not white. And so on and so forth. Over time here, again, getting people to believe little things to take from them. That was one of them. So I think McGuire, got my notes here. Yeah, Peter McGuire. Peter McGuire was one of the gentlemen. And I believe another one was by the name of Matthew Maguire, looks like. I apologize if I've butchered their names here. Some of you all who are historians and study up on this stuff, I apologize if I butcher names. I'm probably going to do it, so I apologize on it. But shout out to people who, I think this needs to be said because of the division that has been sown in by greedy people for us to all be fighting each other, and while we're doing it, they're taking our stuff. I think, just to be quite fair, there are a lot of white people. And for y'all on here who hear me, one, thank you for being fed up and understanding how sick this system is. How it holds back and how it demoralizes everybody. And when I say everybody, I mean everybody. When I first spoke about racism a couple episodes ago, I believe it was the Juneteenth episode, I mentioned how racism has affected everything. And to be honest, ladies and gentlemen, it has. And one place where it has is also the work class, labor. And we'll get into that further. So let me just look here. Got notes all over the place here. The definition, so let's get into definitions of words. The definition of labor: work. Okay, that's kind of obvious. Here's one that gets a little bit goes a little further into it. Having difficulty in doing something despite working hard. And I let that sink in a little bit, because people have an issue with accepting in themselves, and that's because I'm going to use this term. Folks can get upset if they want to, but it's still operating in a master-slave type mentality. Again, I'm not saying anybody's owning slaves here. So before people go a little too far with this, we're talking about the mentality that was left behind from slavery that is passed down over time, which is why people don't like people of different culture, with sexism of a different gender, or in the cases of who you love. So hetero and homosexuality beef, if you will. Which I must caution, ladies and gents, when we talk on that subject, those who wish to take from us are looking for every example possible to do it. And if they see division between homo and heterosexual people, that is where they'll key in on. They'll use it, they'll manipulate it any way possible. Doesn't make either person wrong. It makes the person who's manipulating the thing wrong, which is the same thing like when they talk about black on black violence. It's not the fact, even though it is, that black on black violence is wrong, and where primarily those of African descent need to put a stop to it and find other ways of interacting with each other. However, the reason for the violence is because of the forced way people are kept inside of a system meant to kill them. Because I said this is part of the Sunday message, certain verses here I'm going to interchange as I go along here, which is all stuff that you guys can Google search, look up through your Bible, all that kind of, if you read the Bible, if you don't, something that you can sit here and notice, and hopefully we all can learn from each other's point of views here. If you can hurt and supplant one set of people, you can do it to all of them. They know this. And that's why they flaunt it almost to make sure heterosexual people take the bait on bashing homosexual people, because as soon as you do that, you set the precedent that they can take a different bait from somewhere else and start bashing you. I don't like to pit it as an us versus them mentality, but folks need to, again, and thankfully black folk came up with the term stay woke, because in all honesty, you got to it's the same thing with people want to get caught off on the excess instead of staying with what actually is. The truth is you must wake up to those things of which you have been asleep to. And one of them is how this system was generated and stays generated to take from those for someone else and not necessarily for you. Which is why one of my first episodes, I think, on relationships, or it might have been maybe the second one, I don't remember. I'm a few of them. I'm into a few of them here now. But where when you work hard, you must work hard for yourself as well. It can't just be for the boss. You know, people like to use certain verses like, work as unto the Lord as a way of brainwashing people. But the truth is, if God is no respecter of persons, then God sees no difference between your boss and you. Therefore, the hard work that is put in would be rewarded to you as well as to them. But those who have set up certain businesses and corporations and entities would tell you otherwise. Almost as if the boss is on a godlike status, and that is a very dangerous place to be. The Bible clearly talks about how you should not think more highly of yourself than you ought to think. We have to realize, go back and look at certain things like the story of Moses and the sorcerers in Exodus, where you have people doing feats of supernatural nature, pulling from sources that were not supernatural. But were not. They were not as forthcoming in nature. They were very convoluted. They pulled from a power source that was different than what Moses was operating in. Looked the same though. And you have to you have to stay woke and recognize the difference. And we all have had full recognition of the difference here. Some of these things here, we'll get into this. some of these things, and that's just the basic history of Labor Day. Unions are involved, organizations are involved, people put their lives on the line, their careers on the line as far as their career. Not that their career was bad, but lawyers and financiers, and that's what it takes, ladies and gentlemen. It's going to take us banding together as employees. There's nothing wrong with it. Okay? Again, you have to buy, they need you to buy into a certain set of rules in order for them to increase and you to decrease. And I do say decrease. The measly amount of money that people make every year, the $20,000 to say $60,000, is a drop in the bucket. And the amount of work that you do, I don't care whether it's packing boxes, stacking pallets, building cars, building computers, making architecture. It does saving lives in a hospital. It does not. This even affects the police department, because you got a lot of beat cops here that are not making the money necessary that they should in order to provide for their families. See, I'm not just looking. This is total view here that what we're looking for. And again, if I do miss some things here, ladies and gents, again, I post this on my Facebook page. Feel free, drop a note. This is about learning and growing here, seeing other views, and growing as humanity should. So some of these little misnomers and stuff that people try to plant as a trap to get folks to basically see something they shouldn't see, or think that they see, to accept a reality that they shouldn't. The idea of the self-esteem. And what I mean by that is you have to work harder. You're not working hard enough. You're not applying yourself enough. We've heard this in various sorts from all over companies for as long as people have been working. What a dangerous and horrible tactic to twist motivation and use it as manipulation to achieve subjugation. That is it. That is it as a whole, folks. The people want you to believe all kind of things, where you need to go to college. There is no, and and again, see, this is one of these things where you got to deal with the defenses of people here that have been preset here. I am not saying going to college is wrong, but I am saying setting up the job market so solely anyone who has these degrees, of which they went into horrible debt for, that many times they barely get into the actual field they got the degree in, shows me nothing but a high level of hoaxism going on. High levels. Again, nothing wrong with doing it. It's good to have a trade from different things as you've learned education. Lord knows, as we continue to keep studying history as we have, we see that the history part of the education has been highly exaggerated and misleading. And I would bear to say that that's not the same as financial information that you would get, which is why in building communities to protect ourselves as employees, one of these things that also has to be involved is how we make our money work and making it well known. Not like having a master class and all that kind of stuff. We're talking about no different than they have mental health things, right? So on jobs, you can, if you're dealing with depression, you're dealing with suicide, whatever it is, where you can call someone and get help. It is the same. And I mean, like, it's a 24-hour access kind of thing. It is the same thing that should be done for financial aid. But again, the only reason why it's not yet is twofold. One, the system that is created does not want you making money off the money you're making for the company or your boss. Two, is because we have not stood together and put together proper legislation to be able to have these protections and provisions for us. End of story. We need to make it well known. Again, there's already legalities that are put in place that protects people who try to have the, I'm not singling out any one company. I'm talking about how it should be. Of course, we all know about unions, our friends and family, people who work for unions, but we're talking about each and every business worldwide. We affect each other by allowing greed to continue unchecked the way it is. And it takes a sacrifice. Even say like me speaking about it in a public forum is this. It takes sacrifice, but it is the sacrifice necessary for your salvation, if you will, in regards to how you can acquire money and make it work for you, how you can use your labor to make it work for you the same as it is working for the boss. And everybody would benefit just the same. Do not listen to the lie. Now, again, society may not look as the way it does now, but we have to come to conclusions. Is this the way it's supposed to? Is this the only way it could run? Again, because we live on such a hustle and bustle, we never take the time to actually stop, as the phrase it goes, and smell the roses. And as a result, we miss some very vital stuff here. Another one of these misnomers is that, and I know I'm going to ruffle some feathers with parents here, and I apologize, but the truth is, what many adults learned from their ancestors was wrong. The idea that kids are entitled and lazy is a horrible overstatement. Again, if a child is entitled and lazy, many times it is not because they just went away from the path of teaching and sound teaching from parents, but it is because they learned how to be lazy from their parents. And I think a level of honesty is needed here in order to get the healing necessary that would then affect our pocketbook and our wallets. We've been going around carrying lies for a little too long here that we can get some proper healing, some respectful healing. We're not talking about bashing here, because there is respect for elders. As a matter of fact, I'm gonna take a moment here to read something that I found. It's a passage of scripture that actually kind of blew my mind a little bit. Like I said, I was three different ways I'm going to attack this today. And it really did blow my mind, because I did not realize that this was there. And again, you learn as you go along here. So this is in 2 Thessalonians 3. The main one is verse 10. And these are some of these verses that deal with labor. So it says, this is the Apostle Paul talking to folks in Thessalonica. Church in Thessalonica, people in Thessalonica, because word gets around. A lot of times folks talk about the church element of it, but again, it's not just solely church-centered people. People are people, so folks hear messages. For even when we were with you, this we commanded you, that if any would not work, neither should. Now, the Bible does a lot of, I'm going to be quite frank about it, there's a lot of sexism in the Bible. A lot of words saying he and him, Lord. You have to realize, guys, when the Bible was made back in 1611, scholars were handpicked by King James to write a book for him as a gift. You must be on guard to know where misinformation is coming from if you want to educate yourself properly, even from the most holiest of books, from the most holiest of sources. That doesn't make the source technically unholy. It makes those who have handled the source operating in an irreverent, unholy fashion. So neither should he. Again, start replacing some of that there with they or people. People should not profit when they do not work. Now, again, folks use this as a tool to say how everybody is lazy when they're not working say the way they would work. Goals can be accomplished and completed without a person working in the same fashion. And this kind of gets back to this parent-kid kind of thing here. People can do a job without doing it the way you did it. Honestly, it's actually highly controlling and toxic, really, when you introduce into an environment that everybody's got to do something the way you did it. And again, when you have Bible verses that talk about not thinking of yourself more highly than you ought to think, it means you're going way too far there when you start chastising your children, saying that they need to do something like either their sister, or they need to do something like you did. They need to do something like what you have taught them as far as the things that are right and wrong in the best way they know how. And that will look completely different than the way you did it. But as long as the positive result comes forth, that's all you're looking for. And again, I think sometimes our views of what the positive result are have been highly taken out of context because of greed. It goes all the way down. Now, this talks about how we deal with people, folks that are Christian. A lot of times this thought comes across, oh, that person's not a Christian, because, Christians would never act like that. They would never say this. They would never do that. This verse goes on to say this, as far as talking about those of the faith that are lazy, that are busybodies. Right after verse 10, it talks about, for we hear that there are some among you which walk disorderly. I'm paraphrasing the verses I'm reading here. Not working at all, but are busybodies. Now, I looked into that because I was like, wow, well, the word busybody there, I've heard it a bunch of times. Well, what could it mean? One, the word comes from an origin in the 1500s. It's funny how a lot of these words come out of the 1500s and Middle English time and all that kind of thing. Some of it's French, some of it's Latin, some of it's Greek, of course Hebrew. But many of these words here, busybody means meddlesome or a prying person. Now, ladies and gents, I don't know about you, but I know a bunch of folks who are meddlesome and prying, asking questions they should not. See, again, this has to do with the business relationship. And I'm glad I get a chance to talk about it. Meddlesome people, and the word meddling, where you're just constantly needle picking and causing drama, and another synonym that deals with this kind of thing is petty. People who do things solely to just because they are deficient on the inside, doing things to keep up mischief and strife. We're supposed to be getting along in peace. The Bible talks about doing what is ever possible to stay in and be in peace with people. And here you've got a lot of folks who are doing the opposite. Not working at all. And again, much of this, when you talk about Labor Day and recognizing the achievement of the worker, is because that's exactly what did not happen. Bosses who had the chance to do it without any legislation. That's another horrible thing here with humanity. Do some of this stuff without being legislated to do it. That's the challenge. That's an ongoing daily challenge. Doing things from the side of and you have to let go of a greedy mentality in order to do it. Because as long as you're after me, and those who can give to me, you blind yourself to seeing the rest of everyone else. The only people you will look at is the only ones who give to you. And how selfish of a mindset to think that it's not just for those who stand to gain per se in that light, but also looking out for those who stand to lose and helping them to gain, so that everyone can benefit. It goes on down to say, yet count, and again, him, so we switch him for them, not as an enemy. Now, the Bible talks about further back in the New Testament, going forward back, a couple books back, talks about how we wrestle not against flesh and blood, talking about the everyday things people go through. Look at the correlation between the two verses. Don't count someone as an enemy, but admonish them, help them. Again, him is there. Admonish them and help them as a brother, or again, as a family member. Now, when you really, really, really do count, I'm not talking, again, see this thing about kids being lazy. We're not talking about those who have gone, say, per se, off the path. We're not talking about how people get into this browbeating kind of thing. We're talking about where you sit down and talk to someone, where you got to relate to them. And I think a lot of times the reason why you hear the complaint where parents just don't understand their kids is because they have allowed greed and the sickness that is in this planet to push out the kid in them. Again, the Bible talks about being able to treat others as you would want to be treated. And I understand a lot of people get on the what people have called the golden rule. It's not even a golden rule. It's just Jesus talking. But at the end of the day, you've got to be able to know thyself. You see that in other beliefs in the world where knowing thyself is a big thing. You can't go around helping folks and never take the time for yourself, and it's quite evident. You see it a lot. Another one of those things it talks about in the Bible is that in the end times, and again, everybody gets nuts about trying to figure out when the end is. Again, you're told that you're not going to know, so trying to figure it out is kind of silly. But the things that we should pay attention to, I mean, while you can, it's your right to do so. But some of the things we need to pay attention to is that in the end times, the love of the great body of people will grow cold. People have put aside empathy and understanding and compassion for consumerism and buying and buying and buying. You break financial principle when you never save any money. Also, why it is dangerous that that a lot of these companies have pushed this thing to the brink where there is no money in people's pockets, not because they spend it frivolously. See, again, that's another one of these misnomers. Everybody's spending their money, it's overspending, and that's why you have no money. No, if you don't have any money to spend, you can't overspend. Now, yes, people will go into debt as a result, but again, you can correct that by making sure people are properly paid for. And again, that word proper, and we'll get. Matter of fact, it's a good spot to stop here. Flip over into some of these other words people use. So proper, fair. We're going to start off with fair. A lot of people will tell you life's not fair, right? This happens when people are mistreated at work and they're not paid correctly for what they should be. Many times the excuse me, the thing said is, well, life's just not fair. So, over time of hearing that, it made me want to study what's going on. So the definition of fair, it's an adjective meaning impartial and just. So right there, they're telling you that life is not impartial and just. That again, it goes on in the definition to say without favoritism or discrimination, as an adverb describing an action without cheating or trying to achieve unjust advantage. So life is not these things, is what people are telling you. I'm here today, ladies and gentlemen, to tell you life is very fair. This touches on another subject. Well, how in the world can you say life is fair when you got certain people dying here that shouldn't be? When you got people lose their homes, lose their lives, lose their families that shouldn't be, while other people just go around willy-nilly all over the place, acting in such frivolous nature, wasting their money. How could life possibly be fair? Here is why. Everything you are told that in this life you will face certain trials and tribulations. Gotta let that sink in for a minute. And again, because of the misteachings of people, they have put folks on a path to confusion, which is why that even becomes a question. The problem is not in the stuff that is happening. The problem is, when will we band together so that we can use the energy that is given inside of us to rise above what is happening, which is why you see some of that in these natural disasters that happen in Florida, which shout out to Floridians who are making their way here through these hurricanes. I know y'all got a lot of wild stuff going on in your government right now. However, thanks be to God for your safety. And that goes to folks that I know up in New York. Same thing. These storms that come around this time of year and on the coastlines and stuff, they get pretty wild. Same as in the middle of the country with tornadoes and stuff. Folks got a lot to go through. And again, it comes to everybody. That's why life is fair. Life is actually very fair. Who is unfair are the people. The people are the ones that operate and cheat and try to achieve things with an unjust advantage. That's what racism's about. That's what every one of those isms is about. It is people who are partial and unjust that act with favoritism and discrimination. It's the people, not life. Life is very fair, actually. So getting into that word just, the word unjust, what would be the opposite? Not unjust's definition is not based on or behaving according to what is morally right and fair. Now, we just went through what fair is, so you can plug in those words as you go along. So moral. Moral's a big one because you got immorality spread all over the Bible. That word is used repeatedly. Moral deals with concern with principles of right and wrong behavior and the goodness or badness of human character. So again, what is morally right? What is concerning the principles of right and wrong behavior and the goodness, or I put also the badness of human character? Because again, where you have the good side, there is also bad. Life is lived in balance. It's another one of those things that's hard for people to wrap their head around. This is not just one way or the other. It is the combination of both. And you pick and choose which one you do. But in many of these cases, people keep putting right and wrong on things which in reality are not right and wrong. It's what is right or wrong for you to do. There is a difference between the two. There's a difference between what is actually right and wrong. Like, for instance, you standing up for yourself to be paid properly and treated properly at a job and a company, or not. That's what we're dealing with when we deal with morals. Another one of these things that if you work hard and apply yourself, you will go far in life. Again, that's a half truth. Working hard and applying yourself does not always mean you will go far in life, because of one missing opportunity, which is opportunity. People are manipulated, again, because they are unfair in their work practices. They manipulate opportunities and lie to you about it, again, solely that you will work for them and benefit them and not yourself. Which is why a person can work hard and can apply themselves and not go far in life. Has nothing to do with anything they did per se. It has to do with a society that needs to be more aware of giving opportunities in abundance to people who have worked hard and applied themselves. And because of greed, we have silenced the voice of many men and women, particularly women. We'll go further into that as we get on to Mother's Day next year, speaking on the treatment of women. But I will tell you this as a preview. When we talk about women, one, they are the life givers of this planet. As such, the respect that is due both to themselves, because again, the thing goes both ways, to themselves, and even more so, because this is where a lot of this impropriety and division has come in, is from people to them inside each culture, which is why, and again, this one's going out to white women here. And I know people come off and call me all kinds of names and stuff like that. Folks, you've got to realize how deep the deception is. They have to cause division in order to conquer. That's where the term comes from. This system is also designed to hold down poor folks of all cultures, including Europeans. It started like that in England. That's where you get commoners. That's where you get peasants. That's where you get these words from. Who do you think those people were? Yeah, of course, there were black people and slaves and all that kind of thing back then in the 1200s. But we're talking about also the queens, the princesses, all these people, women, having to kneel under the foot of evil men. It's the reason why the Bible has a whole bunch of he's and stuff and not enough they's and she. And this mentality has seeped into the mind and the psyche of men that they have become woman's enemy, no different than, and I'm talking about white landowner men. That's why white women are leaving. You were treating them wrong, and it is the same thing for each culture. We have to get back to understanding love and compassion. That's the imbalance within men. The masculine, constantly chasing masculinity. You've fallen into the trap of sexism. You are not complete as a man if you do not hold on to your femininity either. You're only one part. Human to be human. Before being male to be human. And we miss it. We miss it. We fall into the trap of the society to use the genders. Again, one of those things, if you ever look up, and again, it's not recognized historically, but look to the content before they start ripping it off the internet and all this other kind of stuff and out of libraries and whatnot. Look to the wording in the Willie Lynch letter, not the fact of the historical importance, which there is historical importance there. Historical importance from the fact of, hey, this document was then this, and this. Look to the wording in it. The division that was made by evil people to divide up things such as age. So the old to the young. It's why you got way too much beef between old and young people. That dynamic was destroyed a long time ago because of things like favoritism and discrimination. Also things like gender. Hair type, body type, fat, skinny, short, tall. Skin color, literally, which is why when people call it racism, they don't realize it's got very little to do with the culture per se of a person or the color of a person. It's got to do with a race and competition to get all the stuff, which is why you play Monopoly and we all have fun with it and we get mad about it and all that kind of thing. But at the end of the day, realize what's going on. I may have mentioned this before in an old episode, but it bears mention. Now, life is very fair, folks. People are unfair. It's the same thing they say about love, where love is blind. Love is not, and I'll get into that when we get into the Valentine's Day episode. Love is not blind. People are. People are very blind. They'll walk past, and again, certain things are hard to catch on, folks, and I understand all the stuff that everybody says, and a lot of it is very true. But people will walk right past clear red flags when it comes to dealing and dating with people. They'll walk right past it, thinking that they can make them better and all this other kind of stuff, when in reality, there's rules to the game that we need to follow. And because we have not, that's where you get these verses in the Bible that talk about my people perish as a lack of knowledge. 2 Corinthians 6 talks about come out from among them and be ye separate. Many times I have talked about the importance of segregation, and true integration. Not this mess. Again, it's parts making a whole. That's the definition of the base word, integrate, that makes up the word integration. The parts, though, are totally unwhole today. So how in the world could you have whole parts if the parts making the whole are unwhole? I'll say it again. If you cannot have wholeness of one thing if the parts that make the whole are unwhole. And while the parts will lose part of themselves to make the whole, they have to go in whole first. You can't have halves of everything everywhere else, so you wind up having halves of stuff, which is why you have what you have today. People playing the game with healthcare, trying to bend the rules so that certain people who have certain money get certain health benefits. You have weakened your society doing so. We have to have more efforts to make sure that people are taken care health-wise. And again, this gets into this word politics, because that'd be the first thing people start saying. Oh, this sounds very political. No, I am not speaking on anything. Matter of fact, I think I wrote down something here that deals with the term politic. I believe. Let me see if I did. Yep, I did. So, comes from the Greek word polis, and this was done about 1200 BC. So the word political goes way, 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 way back. It deals with, and again, coming from the word politic, the study talking about society, people, morality, aka city-state. Actually, when you look at the word polis in Greek, literally talks about city-state. You start city-states like you have literal cities and states today, talking about things that go on in those areas. All you're doing is talking about some. When people use the word politic, they interchange it incorrectly. Folks need to stop calling their government or their government officials politicians and call them government officials, because folks are hiding behind the word politic and politician to hide their sins. And the longer that I'm just putting that info out there, the longer that you look at that scenario, you're going to see what I'm talking about. People use words. It's the same thing with liberal and conservative. They are both misnomers. Because a person feels that they should have less gun control laws does not make them conservative. It means they think they should have less gun control laws. Just the same as liberal wouldn't be a person who thinks that there should be less obstacles to those who are homosexual or transgender. It doesn't make them liberal. It makes them as a person who believes there should be less obstacles in life and society for those who are homosexual and transgender. We use words and phrases too much, and we dull the real power and meaning of things in doing so. We got to be careful in doing that, because those who wish to supplant us are waiting on our own mistakes. To hurt us. Let's see here. I will use Luke, the book of Luke here, as we kind of close this out here, because I think this one is big. So Luke chapter 6, Jesus gets really, I think, and it's funny, right? Because like we talk about like our elders and stuff as they get older. And like, they're at the end of their journey. They're done living. And here it goes, like, I really don't care about whether it makes a person feel okay or this, that, and the other. And there's some truth to that. Again, you cannot just walk past the fact that you should speak the truth in love, but at the same time, the truth still needs to be spoken. And in this idea, especially we're talking about kids there for a little bit, we need to empower them more. We need to empower them more. Again, the idea of first and second and third place, when speaking about the participation trophy thing, you have to understand how high greed and misuse of people is there. So the only thing that's important, again, everybody, it's not just about first, second, and third place. That mentality comes from a greedy mentality. Because when you're all about yourself, the only thing that matters is first, second, and third place, which in reality, people who buy into second and third place are just first place as losers. But again, folks have duped themselves into believing that second and third place means something, which they actually do. You came in second and third place. Everybody is not coming in first. That's just the truth. And if we would teach our kids that, on top of having the importance of participation, you don't get anything unless you participate. And the same thing is here with Labor Day. As workers, we will not get the proper participation we should have from our employers until we participate in ourselves. And that gets in line, because racism and this all kind of intertwines. That also means, talking about coming out and being separate, you have to understand, especially like with the story of Joseph in the story of Exodus, where you have a Pharaoh promising to let someone go and then not doing it and going back to killing them. And we all see that sick two-step at work where we work. Hey, we're going to give you this. Now we're not going to give you that because you need to do a little bit of this and a little bit of that. Then you see this other person who has been a clear brown noser. I have to say this here. Those who are yes people and yes women, no invention was ever made by someone just agreeing with the status quo. You never push yourself any further until you stop actually agreeing with the status quo. You don't build muscles until you separate yourself from the fact I can't keep doing the same exercise at the same weight and think that the breakdown that is needed for my muscles to grow is going to happen without me lifting heavier weights. And in this case, ladies and gentlemen, when it comes to the African descent community, as all communities go, I'm using them as the example here because this is where it's most important. The world is looking and waiting for us to stand up for ourselves. It was evident during that whole 2020 riot thing. The first sign of it. It was evident in this Alabama brawl. Real quick, because I'm not going to really go far into this. One shout out to the people who raised almost $300,000 on the GoFundMe page for that brother who got caught up in this whole chair wielding thing. I know some people are going to be on this thing being like nobody should have gave him anything. He committed a crime and he should have went to jail. The truth is, you have to understand people need to stop bullying people, and then you don't have these violent issues. Which a study into the word violent will show you that it's just dealing with doing things in force. Everybody likes to hold on to the word violent that deals with you throwing punches and kicks or shooting someone with a gun and stuff like that, where that is violent. But the truth is, when you look to the word violent, which will actually help in certain verses in the Bible that talk about the violent take it by force, it's talking about you being passionate, not you using physical force. And you being passionate violent is a descriptive word. People can do things with passion, intensity. It's got to mean something to you. If you're going to believe these kinds of things, it truly has to mean something to you, or else don't do it. Don't do it. If you're going to two-step and half your way through it, don't do it. Something about that busybody thing, going back to that. In the Greek, it's the word, I want to say periogos, if I'm saying this correctly, which in Greek means a worker of magic or a witch. And Lord bless the witches that were hunted incorrectly by an insurrection. That's the best way of saying it. Killing people thinking they're doing right and they were doing wrong. Folks, I'm very few. I'll get into witches and magic and all that kind of thing when I do my Halloween episode, because there is some serious importance that we need to put to bed on the subject of Halloween. Again, as we celebrate Labor Day and all of these holidays coming up here to the end of the year and going forward, you got to understand that some of this stuff is not what people are calling it evil. There is some very serious, true, and holy things behind it that we need to pay attention to that will help us as a society. Now, that's a side topic for that episode. But in Luke chapter 6 here, verse 31, it goes on to say the following, and hold on to your seats for this, folks, because this is rough. Of course, it's the do unto others as you would have as ye would that people would do to you, do you also to them likewise. Flip it around. What you would want done to you, do to people. You want to be loved, walk in love toward people. You want to be respected, respect people. And a lot of the instances with this whole business relationship, the respect from the bosses to the workers is broken. Partially because of the greed that the bosses have allowed themselves to be deceived by. And the other side is because the workers do not stand up for themselves. It's another one of those reasons why black folks are so misaligned and looked down upon, not only because of the lies spread throughout humanity about African culture, but because of the fact black folks don't stand up for themselves. They're the first ones to talk about doing something peaceful, and there's nothing wrong with that, but it's out of balance. You must stand up for yourself. When wrong is truly done to you, you must stand up for yourself. Nobody, this goes along for kids with bullies and stuff like that. You must stand up for yourself. I understand parents. I get this whole warmongering and again, taking the word violent out of context and stuff like that. I get where people are coming from, but you cannot protect yourself unless you're protecting yourself. And you do not only protect yourself peacefully. Yes, that is a way of doing it. Yes, there's many fights you should walk away from because it's not worth your time. But at the end of the day, when you are pushed and you're talking about your life on the line, your family's life on the line, you need to stand up for yourself. And it's the same thing with workers. We work every day, tirelessly. I'm not getting caught off on all the other little excuses and people use. We're coming down to the base tactics here, the foundation of this. You got people working tirelessly every day, missing out on their families improperly, pushing and making money and missing out on themselves improperly, which is one reason why they can't treat others right, because they don't know about themselves. Too busy working for someone else, you've missed out on yourself. It is clear to see the imbalance there. And I'm sorry I've gone a little bit long here, folks, but this is necessary. I've been stewing on this for a minute, and it's just needing to be said. You know, we got talents locked away on the inside of us. The Bible talks about that too. We need to start putting these things to good use. And being stuck under the thumb of somebody or some entity that does not see you according to your talents, according to what you know you bring to the table, it is time that we have safe havens. That's another thing in building these communities. Make it well known where people can go, whether you got to do it through pigeon flying a note to somebody or some underground way of doing it, whatever, but make it well known where people can get help. It's no different than mental health. Don't let people die alone in this wilderness of finance and making money for folks without bringing them. I understand you can bring a horse to water and they won't drink, but we're not talking about that part of it. Make it well known. No matter what part of this nation you're in or on the planet, where people can go and start getting help from a financial standpoint, where people can go and start brain mashing together and getting thoughts together with groups of people of like thought on how they can protect themselves in their companies. This is important. This is important. That will help society in general. I know they'll tell you opposite. You have to learn how to disconnect yourself from what is the social status quo norm they tell you, so that you can see a bigger picture. Because if you're looking inside everything they're telling you, you're going to miss it. You're going to miss it. Jonah did damage. Pulling another story from the Bible here. Jonah did damage by not following after these types of principles. Doing what is right, even when it looks all messed up. Doing what is right. Not allowing even your own fears to manipulate you to inaction, because that happens a lot. So it goes on to talk about here, after this whole doing unto others, in verse 39, can the blind lead the blind? And this is a person. This is just Jesus here talking and just kind of giving, as they say in the street, giving game to the disciples here. Can the blind lead the blind? Wouldn't they both fall into a ditch? I'm pretty sure if you watch two people walk who are blind, this is not to disparage those who cannot see. That is a horrible ailment. That is a horror ailment. It's a horror. For lack of a better term, something horrible to live with, where you cannot see, where you can partially see. Same thing with hearing. Where you can't hear, we need to be more compassionate to folks. There's something to said about being empathetic, understanding. And again, from a Christian standpoint, I think if Christ can be touched with the feelings of our infirmities, we can be touched internally and move with compassion toward what goes on with people and their everyday struggle when it comes to work and labor. The disciple is not above his master, but everyone that is perfect shall be his master. And why beholdest thou the mote? So here's the fun here, right? So mote in the Old English means a small particle. In the Greek, it's used as a twig. And in the Old English also deals with almost like particles of dust. Particles of dust, like an array of light. So, how can someone behold, and again, this idea of a brother's eye? Many times this has got nothing to do with the enemy as people make it seem. It's got to do something with people closest to you. So again, how can you remove the dust out of someone's eyes when you've got let me go back into this. How can you remove the mote that is in thy brother's eye, or again, thy sister's eye, in people's eyes, but do not perceive the beam? So beam there is a stick of timber. Now, most of us who have done any home improvement know what a beam of something looks like. Again, guys, we got to readjust the way we think and relearn many of these things so that we can truly help each other be better as a society. So that's what I got for today, guys. Again, I apologize. I went a little bit long here. Probably by far the longest episode I've made. So I thank y'all for hanging on here with me. And until next time, look to find the beauty in a different view.